So one of the first things when you start to look at any bonds that are not U.S. government and treasuries, because U.S. Treasury bonds and Treasury agencies, slightly different, but for all practical purposes, they're backed by the U.S. government, and they're considered the highest level, or like AAA plus. When you begin to look at either municipal bonds or you begin to look at corporate bonds, then there is what's called a nationally accepted rating system for rating those bonds with regards to credit risk. And that starts both on the municipal side and then also on the corporate side. The highest level is AAA. So it goes in descending order. As you descend that, then it's assumed that there's higher principal risk. And normally there's less cash flow coverage to cover the debt, which is what it's all about. So the rating services come in, they look at your balance sheet, they look at the cash that you have on hand, they look at your cash revenues, they look at basically how much cash you have on hand as a reserve, how much cash you have in cash flow. Just like a bank's going to say, do you have enough money to pay your car payment? It's the same thing. You know, do you have enough money, and how much money do you have to pay your coupon payment, your debt that you're going to pay on these bonds? And so depending on the magnitude of that coverage, you will be starting at AAA, then you go to AA, single A, then you would go to triple B, double B, single B, and then C, all the same, triple C, double C, single C, and all the way to D, which is a very bad letter to have, because D means you're in default. You are not paying your debts, you've got serious problems. Basically, it's time to go look for a flight on Southwest Airlines, right? So when you begin to do that ranking, the people have to look at and realize that that is a somewhat quantitative but also subjective rating that an outside agency, it's basically the corporate and municipal bond equivalent of a credit score. That's what it is. It just works with letters instead of saying you've got a 720. And they're going to say you got AAA, AA, and then there's in between those are the broad gradients. You actually have ones that are in between. You know, you can have single A plus, single A minus, and they're kind of telling you the trend of where they think it's going. But the point being is that as you look at that, there's very distinct ways to see the credit risk that you're taking. And so if you go down in rating, you're taking more credit risk on those parameters I just described, but you expect to get paid more. More risk, more return. So you're going to expect to get a higher yield based upon that. And then you just have to decide, or we have to decide, is it worth it? And then it's something that clearly has to be monitored. But that's also one of the reasons in the municipal area and then also in the corporate area, there's a lot more opportunity. Because we can be looking at something that has a single A rating or a triple B rating, and we're looking at it saying, hey, the earnings are growing, the sales are growing, everything is good, the cash flow coverage is good, and it's getting better. But the rating services are going to be behind the curve, and we can jump in there a little earlier and say, hey, we're getting an extra 0.5% in this, and they really shouldn't be paying that much, so it's inefficient, it's cheap. We buy it, get the extra 0.5%, and then if we're right, everybody else starts to realize that, and basically the bond goes up in value. So with that, you're getting the higher yield, picking up the extra 0.5% in this example, and hopefully you pick up a few percents in appreciation, and then at some point it might get to be where it's gone up, in our opinion, too much, and it's overvalued, and we'll sell it and move on. So the key is to be, keep your eyes on the horizon and keep them open, and be light on your feet, and don't fall in love with your bonds. You need to you need to move and be flexible to maximize return.